But is there that, time frame, call it the first 30 days or 30, 60, 90? What kind of advice do you recommend, for that new leader to get off to a good start?
Absolutely. I think your first day and your first month as a new leader is like, a new kid at school or joining the team, making an impression. So how do you make that impression? So we're going to assume that the team is already in place. So really there are three things that are really critical in that first month. The first one on that list is really making sure you can clarify expectations. And so I think this requires sitting down with the team, answering some key questions so that everyone's clear what the goal is, what they feel, and hearing from them what is achievable and realistic, and where they will need your help and support the most. And I think that's important because one of the most common pitfalls for a new manager who is walking into an existing team is that they walk right in and they're not clear on expectations. So if you can get that clear right away, I think that's important. Now, the flip side of that is you walking in, you have been given that role by someone you work for. So just as important as getting lined up with the new team, you've got to make sure you're clear with your boss on what those early expectations are. So that's kind of number one, is expectations management. I think the second one, back to that servant leadership idea, is to be really available to your team and visible to them. So hands-on, from day one, I think is important. And in some cases, you're going to have to prove yourself, not only to the team, but the people who put you in that role, that they made the right decision. I do think it's going to be, that quality time on the physical or virtual floor. So you're shoulder to shoulder with the team. They see you in the trenches. I think that goes a long way. And it works both, works both ways. When those folks see you around, it will be easier for them to approach you, and they'll know that they can approach you and you'll be open to support them, give them your thoughts and coaching, and make sure you're getting them the resources they need. So I think those two things are really critical. And the third one is not just an advice for the first 30 days, but forever, is asking for feedback. And that's going to be, that's going to be the basics. How am I doing? But it's also calibrating, for the new team. They had a manager, and you want to make sure that they understand you want to know how they're doing, what's changed since you came in, what hasn't, what can be done differently or improved upon. If people know that you sincerely want their perspective, not only on their own situation, but how the team could perform, I think that's great. And you could do that in different ways. You could do that in, a structured check-in. You can do that informally. And as I said before, it doesn't just have to be about how they're doing on their job, but it's their perspective on the larger direction of the team. Many times folks have ideas around that, and they value, being heard in that. So I think this is the kind of the beginning of building those relationships with those folks, which is going to take time. Most people aren't going to trust you out of the gate. They're going to want to see that. And it also goes without saying, at the same time you're doing that with your folks, you want to be calibrating with your manager. I recall in those situations, I would probably have a weekly one-on-one with my manager to say, how did week 1 go? How did week 2 go? And I think that's perfectly logical for that first month.
Chris, those are great ways to be able to deal with those first 30 days. I know that was a major challenge when I first stepped into those kinds of situations. So what are some examples of things that you wished you'd known before you met Barry?
No, it's a great question. And I actually did this exercise probably 15 years into my career when I went to training at the Center for Creative Leadership. And they said, write yourself a letter to your earlier work self and what advice you would give. And I think I actually refer to some Center for Creative Leadership practices through our discussion here. But the one I said, which is actually a common one, is don't worry so much. And so what they say is worrying is pointless, mainly because, two things happen. Number one, the thing you're worried about doesn't frequently turn out the way you think it would, so it's unnecessary. But if it's real, worrying isn't going to fix it, action is going to fix it. So really figuring out that action.